Now, you don't have to be a great artist to go ahead and work inside of Anime Studio Pro. The program has lots of tool sets which make that not quite the necessity that it used to be. However, it's important to still do character development. Let me go ahead and open up a little bit of a Vini that I've been working on and tell you why it's important to do that stuff. Let me zoom out just a little bit. The reason being, especially if you're new to working with animation and planning for it, may not be apparent. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what's going on. It's very normal in an animated environment, or actually anything that has artwork or something over time, whether it's video, 3D animation, or 2D animation, as with Anime Studio Pro, to really plan what's going on. You can't kind of wing it because there are so many things that are interconnected, and if you don't think ahead of the game, working with the software, regardless of the software, can be a real drag. So let's look at some of the character style sheets that I put together here, just so you can get a sense of what I'm thinking and how I'm looking at the drawings to determine how I build the character, because that becomes very important as we continue down this pathway here. So I've mentioned earlier on in the series that we've got kind of this 1950s type of animated style going on, where we've got a sophisticated background and a little more simplified animated character that works into the scene. Our bank robber is going to have a little bit of that 1950 flair as well. As I zoom into it here, he's going to have one of those little fedoras, have kind of that typical, gray, 5 o'clock shadow that was common with characters created during the 50s. But as I work with the character, I make some determinations about how it's going to be put together. And again, even doing basic sketches that may not be the best artistic things ever done will help you problem solve how you're going to build the characters. One of the first things I wanted to look at is working with the character in a 3/4 view, which is what he'll be doing sitting at the table. For a full character build, you'd want 3/4 views each direction, a front view, a back view, all that type of stuff. And I won't slow down the series by going into all those. But look at what's going on here, and this is going to determine how I put together the character. When we look at the face, I can see that the face needs to go ahead and connect to what should be a neck under the shirt. So this is going to have to be on a separate layer. And this is how I start breaking down analysis of the objects to get a good idea of how I'll proceed. This 5 o'clock shadow and the mouth. The 5 o'clock shadow needs to, if you will, trap or mask to this lower lip. He's got this tough guy underbite here. This lets me know that the mouth layer is going to have to be a masked layer that is probably separate from the rest of the head and has to sit in front of it, yet the nose is going to have to be able to come in front of this 5 o'clock shadow. So this face is going to be a little more complex than first look. If the character has any type of morph targets or morph dials applied where there's a little bit of a head turn going on, this lower lip needs to be able to recede into this 5 o'clock shadow area so we can get just some different types of expressions that are worked out right here. Something else to look at here. The line quality of the outside of the character is going to be very important. That's how it's defined in the historic things. Think Fred Flintstone, early Woody the Woodpecker type of things, if you've ever had a chance to see some of those. Even some of the second generation Disney movies that were created have a solid color outline with a mottled, or I should say a shaded color interior. Usually the outline is a darker color or a darker value color of what the fill color is. So if we're working with a typical Caucasian flesh tone here, then we'd wind up with something darker, more in the orangey range. When we get to suits, if I want this to be a black suit, this is where that kind of inverts and winds up being a lighter blue outline, so you can make distinction between arms and abbreviated or stylized folds inside of the clothing. Also for the hands, determining what kinds of hands we'll need, whether I'm going to create a hand that is fully animated or whether I create a hand that's going to function with switch layers, or kind of a combination of both. You can have specific morphs for individual switch layers, and that may be what's going to go on here. One of the little elements of the animated scene we're working on is that the character, the bank robber, is going to be kind of playing with coins on a table, picking them up and dropping them. So I'm looking at these, trying to decide, okay, how would I animate it? Is it simply going to be one hand layer where the thumb and, say, the index finger are the only thing that are actually rigged to flex? That may be the way to do it. And then if we've got a hand that switches right here, I just switch to a different view and don't have to worry about animating each finger. Typical for lots of animation, not necessarily 5 fingers because it's easier to work with it that way. Also for pants, those types of things, we can see that the feet will have to nestle behind the pants. I may use some special kind of little blending functions that we learned in some other movies right here. And then as I go through the other character development, how far the head needs to move, what kind of considerations I have for side-to-side looking. The character, I want to just have little black eyes with a highlight. I don't really want to illustrate eyes. And the eyebrow here is going to be solid. He's going to have this kind of monobrow here, where I can go ahead and create all sorts of expressions just with how round the eyes are or not, or how the eyebrow actually inclines, goes straight across, all sorts of things here. So it just gets me in a good mindset to begin working with it. The police character, or the federal agent that's going to be tracking him down, haven't really worked out a detailed sheet, but I do kind of know how I want him to appear in silhouette. So we have a little bit of a fedora. I might do a 2-color type of implementation of that, where it's a black and a gray, something like that, where you can tell there's body parts, but that's really all you can tell when we see the character at a distance. Also, for brevity, we're not going to drag through this, and you're not going to have to watch me draw every component. I'm going to introduce components that have already been assembled and analyze what they've done or how they were created, just to speed things up so you can kind of see how I'm thinking as we go through this step by step.